What's up, everybody? I'm DJ Chaney. I am a DJ and producer, and you are watching DrumChats TV.
Hey everyone, this is Travis, and you're watching DrumChats, and I'm here with my buddy DJ Chaney, and we're going to be talking about some virtual drums today and what all goes into club mixes and everything that you do. So, Chaney, thanks for being here, man.
Cool, man. Thanks for the opportunity. It's quite the trip from Houston.
Yeah. So, speaking of Houston, you're from Rice. You were a decathlete for a while.
I am.
How did you get into DJing, going from civil engineer major and sports? How'd you get here now?
Yeah, well, I think it all started in high school. I was always the kid on the block that would burn the new CDs for all of my friends and hey, this is the new music, that kind of deal. And then I ended up getting a track scholarship to Rice, and I was in a dorm one day, and the parties there at Rice they didn't do it for me, and the music was always really bad, and I was like, well, I feel like I have a good taste in music. And so I bought these big speakers, and I started DJing in my room and throwing these really kind of cool parties while running track and trying to get sleep. And it kind of started from there, and I kind of fell in love with it, and that's where the journey kind of started.
Right on. So you still do a lot of the parties at Rice? I know you and I met, you were out in the parking lot at one of the games.
Right.
And are you still back and forth there? Where are you at now
since
you graduated?
It's really cool. They actually still book me, which, go Rice. But yeah, I do a lot of the alumni events there still, and I'll do the tailgates for the football games and a few of the other sporting events as well. So they still take care of me, which is great.
That's awesome. So. And you're in Vegas right now. You came from Houston, and you're reaching out through MGM.
Correct.
What's going on out there?
I met a few friends that worked for MGM, and I am currently in the process of getting a few gigs there, and I'm literally just waiting on a phone call. Come on, MGM, let's get together. But yeah, so hopefully I'll be working with the WNBA there, the UFC. I think they mentioned the Billboard Awards.
Wow.
A few other things. So it should be pretty neat. I'm just again waiting on a phone call.
Yeah.
So
cool, man.
So it should be cool when it happens. It's just the waiting game.
Yeah. So I think what probably a lot of people wonder, we've interviewed Matt Greiner, who plays for August Burns Red. We interviewed the owner of SJC Drums, Mike Chaprari.
Right.
We even interviewed a professional engineer, Travis Kennedy,
cool.
Getting different perspectives on, as a drummer, somebody who sells drums, somebody who mixes and engineers with drummers, and now you with DJing.
Right.
I think there's a lot of misconception about what goes into DJing and what can be done, whether it's all virtual or pre-recorded drums. How does that play into your role as a DJ? What do the drums do for you when you're writing a song?
The drums are a huge part, a key element to every song. It's just what makes it. The beat is the beat, and however you program the drums into your track is the way the track's going to be. It's funny, I actually I realized during the stages of learning how to produce, I would always use the electronic drums on Ableton and just kind of go to town with those.
Yeah.
But the more advanced I got and the mixing, I was man, I really need the live drum instrumentation, because there's nothing like a live drum on your track.
Yeah.
And so it's just it's more authentic as well. Definitely signifies who you are.
Yeah.
And your own drum packages and that kind of deal.
Yeah.
Hopefully I answered your question. I don't know.
Yeah.
I kind of went on a tangent there.
Well, that's a good segue. When you're writing one of your songs, you started out doing remixes, and
right.
Your album. There's a couple different albums you've done where you're remixing other people.
Right.
But even now you're getting into the original part.
Right.
How do you decide what song needs live sounding drums to virtual dubby and electronic sounding drums?
Right, great question. I mainly focus on the top 40 and more of the EDM scene, and a lot of those type of drums don't really need the live drums. if that makes sense. I'll use a live drum and put like an extra kick on top of it to make it more punchy and that kind of deal. But if I have like an acoustic guitar, or it's more of a, I guess, more of the Avicii type style, I definitely would use more of the live drums.
Okay.
And it just feels better. It feels more natural that way. So it does depend on what kind of track you are making.
Yeah.
Depending on, you decide on what drum to use.
Yeah. Well, even like in the cadence of the song, you and I were listening to some music earlier,
Right.
and breaking apart different things. What is it, especially in the build? I feel like DJing, whether it's dubstep or electronic or house or dance,
Right.
the build is what a lot of people looking forward to because of the drop.
Right.
Even when going from quarter notes to eighths to sixteenths,
Right.
whatever the case may be, how do you go about engineering what that looks like and how that impacts what you're trying to do with that song?
Right. That's the thing. I guess it just all depends on what kind of vibe you're going for. Because if I use like the electronic kicks and that kind of deal, sometimes it gets too repetitive and too just like robotic.
Yeah.
And so if you have a really cool build, and I'm just not like every snare hit is a little bit different, decibel level and that kind of deal. You can only really get that truly from like a live drummer,
Yeah.
playing on your track. And it all comes down to the vibe of the track you want. But there's nothing like I said, like live instrumentation on your track.
Yeah, we're just talking about, like where those drums fit into that build, and how you're engineering building into that drop.
Right.
What different types of drums, or how you go about making that build what it is. Because especially too, I think with, let's take dubstep for instance.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of stereotype that comes with dubstep where it's your typical quarter, eighth, 16th, and whatever.
Right.
But how do you go about, especially when writing original music, how do you go about making it fit in that genre of music, but still making it different to where it's not the same as Skrillex and David Guetta?
Right, and I feel like to find your own sound is really, really tough nowadays more than anything, because it's like all these people are just trying all these random sounds and like throwing it together. It really just comes down to like I said, the track you're making. Like if it's just like 4 to the floor and you're just like nailing the drop, and then you just have like that one cymbal that's just like
Yeah.
I mean, you really don't need like a live drummer to program that. So it kind of depends on the drop as well, or like whatever you're, like I said, making, and it just, if the live drums work with that specific track.
Yeah.
So
going into like the live scene, I know right now you're working on some stuff in the studio and
Right.
working with some engineers, but even with live, going to that misconception that a lot of people have with DJs, a lot of people may look at it and say, this guy's just pressing the play button.
what's yeah, you are.
But we also know the engineering behind it, and there's like
Right.
a lot of DJs are incredible engineers and a lot of
Definitely.
incredible composers.
Incredible musicians, right?
And so, how does that play a role in your live set? Where when you're in front of a crowd, whether it's
Right.
at a wedding or an event or whatever, how do you make this song that I'm listening to on my phone? How do you transform that into a live setting?
Right, and I think we've talked about this before, and like that's my ultimate goal is, you make all these tracks and you produce all these records, and almost have like parts of my track where it's like the live instrumentation, where if I was on stage performing, I would love like that saxophone player or that drummer or that guitar player to come and like just lay down the riff, and during the live set.
Yeah.
There's nothing like the live performance aspect of it, and I think that's like super unique.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. So, really, your goal is to kind of transform DJing from being one guy to being a production.
Yeah, I've seen it a few times. I know like Avicii had, like for Wake Me Up, I think he had like a little band out there, and I've seen a few other DJs try to do it. I think it just brings a whole new element to the production process and like to a performance, because typically the DJ does come up there and like press the play button, and like all the fireworks and like the everything is just programmed to like his set. But when you have like the live instrumentation come and join with that, I think it just gives an awesome presentation.
Yeah.
I think it's really neat.
So going from that back into the song production part, whenever you are writing a song from scratch,
Right.
are you starting with your beat? And if so,
That's a good question.
what are you using? You know, like a lot of people wonder, where are these sounds coming from? You know, are you using Ableton? Are you using Reason? Are you mapping out beats? You drawing them in? Like, how, like,
Right.
what does that look like for you?
I guess to start so when I make a beat, they start from all different kinds of like spots. Either I hear like a really cool sound, like a sample, just from like old school music or it's something that's already been done. Or I'll look at like a Nexus patch or like Silent or Massive. Those are my three kind of go-to. And yeah, like very few songs actually I start with the drums. I kind of start with like a cool sound, and then however like the sound works and whatever kind of track I want to make, then I like apply the drums to it, which that determines whether I use like the electronic drums or I need like some live drums on this bad boy. So
Okay.
yeah.
So when you are using virtual drums, whether it's sampled or whether you sampled an acoustic kit or you're using an 808,
Right.
what's that process like? Like when you're actually creating your song, how are you going about picking your tempo? Choosing your actual beat, where the kick drum goes, where the snare goes.
Right. I feel like I literally try every option that I can think of because unless you try it, you don't know.
Yeah.
So when I have like the sound or like the vibe of the track I want, I'll put it at this BPM, and then I'll put it at this one, and then I'll put it at this one, and then I kind of just like try different drum patches or different drum sounds like on every one of those tempos, and I kind of just see like what works best, what fits this vibe, and then after that it kind of like works out that way. So usually.
Awesome.
But
yeah, and again, I think that's what a lot of people wonder is like, when they see a DJ, they're like, what makes this guy do what he's doing? What goes into it? And I think, going back to it, a lot of DJing, a lot of dance, a lot of dubstep, a lot of house, everything is very drum oriented.
Very.
Whether it's the time signature, the kick, or the snare.
Right.
And so, thinking about that going into the songs that you're writing, whether it's electronic or it's live, or you've got 4, 5, 6, 7 people playing with you.
Right.
How important the drums really are and how much of an impact they make. Like you and I were talking earlier about one of your new songs that you haven't released yet.
Right.
Even just the drop, that's where I wanted to wrap up with was what is your goal when you're writing a song, especially with the drums or with bass or with synth or whatever it might be? How are you going in it saying, I want the crowd to feel this way? Or are you making a song and saying, I just want people to have a good time? Like, what is there a preconceived thought going into writing those songs?
Definitely. I think every track is different, and the way you write the track is like, I want to give my audience this kind of feeling. And whether that's just like, all out, like, hey, I'm going to throw it in your face, and then you use like this kind of, these really hard, intense drums, or if it's like a feel-good party vibe like you're just talking about, use a different kind of drum. But it really just comes down to what track you're going for, and what you want your audience to hear.
Yeah.
So
last question: as a producer, as a DJ, as an audience member, when you're picking out musicians, and specifically with drummers, what is it that you're looking for when say you wanted to hire a drummer and say, I want to put you on a track, or I want to sample your kit? When you think of a drummer, what are you looking for when you're wanting to work with somebody? Whether it's a drummer or a cellist or anybody, what kind of what kind of artist are you looking for?
Honestly, like in my experience of like just working with other musicians and that kind of deal, it's just passion. I love working with artists that just love what they do and are super passionate about what they do, because usually if that's the case, then everything else just works out, and like I want to work with that person. And if we can't figure it out at first, then we will eventually get there, because it's like, hey, we both want to make this work, and we're both like super driven, and like the work ethic is there. And I feel like for me, collabing with any artist or reaching out to anyone, it's just like me seeing that. I appreciate that, and that's who I would want to work with.
Yeah.
So.
Well, if somebody does want to work with you, how do they get in touch with you, man?
They can reach out to me on my website, www.thedjchaney.com. But email me at thedjchaney@gmail.com. Those are probably the two easiest.
Cool. And you're on Instagram, Twitter,
Yeah,
Facebook,
I was about to
the
say
whole thing?
Instagram, Twitter, yeah. So
Awesome. Well, it's been good chatting with you, man. Thanks
thanks,
for
man.
taking time.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me.
I appreciate it.
Cool.